world where achievements and accolades motivate us to do more and be more, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there is more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old, push your way through, and claim the deeper life that's calling you.
That's where we excel.
We're your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren and Stephanie,
and this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Sit back and relax as we share the shortcuts we've uncovered to help you make shift happen. Welcome to the Soulful Leader Podcast. This is Maren. I'm here with Stephanie, and we're just coming out of the holidays, and there's been a lot on our hearts around perception. And as it's so interesting because it seems like we're adults and we're adulting, and yet so much of what we do comes from this place, this unhealed place inside of us that's actually, a rebellious teenager or, a child that is really needy. And one of the most interesting thing to me is I've been working with a lot of women in women's groups, and there's this feeling of not worthy enough. And as a woman, I have absolutely experienced that. And I can't actually speak to it from a masculine perspective because I'm not a man. Um, and it does seem like women tend to carry that a little bit more than men do, or take it personally more. What are your thoughts on that, Stephanie?
Yeah, I'm reflecting on that because the worthiness aspect, sometimes we can be so empathic, meaning we take on everybody else's emotions and thoughts and beliefs, and it immobilizes us. Like, it's wonderful to have empathy, but sometimes it can literally short circuit us. And I've heard it said before, and I can relate this with myself too. It's like, if I'm putting my attention on someone or something else outside of me, then I don't have to take care of me. I don't need to look inside and take care of those parts that might be hurting or needing, or, just even giving me an insight. Because that would require for me to make a change and to be different. So it's much easier for me to be a rescuer and to be, because you know what, it looks good, doesn't it? It's like
It
it looks
does.
really, oh, she's so empathetic, she's so loving, look at her giving all those things and volunteering and doing this and doing that, oh, she's so good. But inside, your structures of support are like toothpicks, and seriously, and then someone
Right.
insults you or criticizes or doesn't respond to you, and you're freaking shattered. And I'm like, okay, that's ridiculous. I need to change that internal structure. So, I mean, I can speak to it on that. And I have a lot of, like I said, myself included, I have a lot of clients and friends who do take things very deeply to heart. And it's almost like we wear it as a badge. Like, I do so much. I'm such a great person. Why is this happening to me? Like the
In
poor
my
sad tomatoes,
family,
right?
yeah, in my family, we call it the martyr. And boy,
Yeah.
boy, oh boy, like raise my hand. Yeah, we got the whole martyr thing. Oh, I do so much and you don't value me, right?
Yes, exactly. I had a conversation about volunteering with someone the other day, and I said, years ago, and this would be years ago, I always felt like, I'm giving so much and I'm not getting anything back. Dang it, I'm not even getting some appreciation and value for all the hard work I've done in volunteering. And I laugh because it's like, well, that's not really the point of volunteering, is it? Like, you kind of missed it. You kind of missed the memo on that one.
Well, and I think that's a great conversation for right now, coming out of the holidays, of like how many of us feel like we gave so much. We made meals and we thought about people and we, did, and then we come out and we feel exhausted ourselves and not taken care of.
Well, and we
And we
haven't
want to
been
put that
present.
on somebody, right? Because so this is where we want to put it on somebody else and blame somebody out there,
Mhm.
blame the circumstances out there. Oh, I was so busy and so didn't think of me. And, I wanted this or whatever it was. And we don't look inside. And when we started, one of the things I said is, the we want so much for ourselves and we think that we're adults, but that's not an adult way of interacting with ourselves or the world. That's actually our teenager. We're stuck in our teenager.
Yeah, so explaining a teenager, like of anyone that has been, of course, or has a teenager, I don't want to, you can't make me, screw you, or resignation, like why bother? I can't do anything right anyway.
Yeah.
That's often a teenager within you talking. And when I say that within you, I think of it as parts of me, you know. I
Mm.
think we've talked about this before in other podcasts, but there's many parts of us that are showing up. If you think of the holiday, you know, eating at the table and everyone has a discussion about something and everyone seems to have a different opinion or a different version of the same story. And that's true. I remember someone saying to me once, watch yourself when you get defensive. It's like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Like, what are you talking? Why? Like, that didn't happen that way. And to catch yourself and say, well, wait a minute, that's their reality.
Right.
I don't know. That's from their perspective. And a great answer is like, well, you could be right. That's a good point. I hadn't looked at it that way.
I
And all
have
of a sudden
a
it makes space, right?
It does make space. So I have a great story about that. Just happened between my husband and myself. We went out to breakfast and coming back, we had some leftovers. And so he walked me to the passenger side of the truck and opened the door for me because he's very, very gallant like that. And I got in and I was going to take the container of leftovers from him. And he said, "Seatbelt, please." And I was like, a little like, okay, am I three? Oh, and I didn't say anything. I put my seatbelt on. I took the container and he closed the door and he walked around and I said to him as he got in, I said, you know, I don't mind putting my seatbelt on. I just don't want to be treated like a 3-year-old. Could you, say that differently in the future? And he got a little triggered himself and he said, well, it was just because I cared. I didn't want to have the leftovers, have you trying to like juggle that while you were trying to put your seatbelt on. He said, and I didn't say seatbelt, please. I said, put your seatbelt on first so that when I handed you, he goes, but don't worry about it. I won't do that again. I was like, oops. No, I would like you to be thoughtful of me. And what I heard was because I was in a place of not valuing myself.
Yeah, the internal structures, the internal dialogue
Yeah,
gets mirrored out into the outer world. And what someone actually says is not what you actually hear
exactly.
because it gets filtered
It
based
gets
on your own
filtered.
inner narrative.
And I had one narrative going on, and he had a different narrative going on. And I heard what he said through my filter. So when we do that, it's like we don't actually know what people are thinking, even though we think we know what they said. And that was a perfect example. I thought I knew what he said, and it meant one thing to me, and I didn't even hear what he said because I was in my own stuff. My
Yeah, like when we talk about not having space or it's too loud, what we're
Mm.
talking really is the internal. There is no
Yeah.
space inside ourselves because it's being taken up with a whole I always think of Inside Out, that cartoon that Disney does, Pixar does.
Oh yeah,
And
with the people in the brain
yeah, the
all
people in the
talking.
brain, the angry one, the scared one, the doubting one,
Yeah.
that's so true of what goes on. And it can be very a loud party inside of our own psyche so that we filter out what's really being said. And it's matching the internal dialogue going on
Yeah.
inside.
Then I have proof. See,
Yeah.
he doesn't value me. See this, see whatever, et cetera. And I will. And we've talked a lot about the reticular activating system on this podcast of there is a part of our brain that literally filters in and out what we need to be aware of because our
Yeah.
conscious mind can't keep up with the volume of data. So we take in like 11 billion bytes of information per second, and our conscious mind can only handle 60,000 of those. So there is a filter,
Oh,
and that,
essentially a protection.
yeah,
Otherwise, you'd be short circuiting all over the place.
yeah,
It's too much.
right.
So we
Here's
filter
so
out
it's like, here's
based
what's
on our
important.
patterns. Yeah.
Right. And, it's like because I had that filter in place, it heard certain words and didn't hear others or misinterpreted or whatever, because I needed to, reinforce the fact that I wasn't quite worthy enough. And then
Yeah.
I
It's
had to
it.
defend myself.
So this is so real, right? Like this is between two people who love each other. You imagine
Yeah.
between two strangers or between two communities or like there's so much interpretation that isn't always the truth of what's really happening. And
Yeah.
I think we make up so many stories in our own mind and project it out there based on our past. And we get the characters of the play on the other side to fit into those character roles that we have written for them. And I think there's such a power of being in the unknown. Like if you
Mm.
woke up every day and you didn't have this preconceived idea of who you were and who your partner was or the people that are going to look in, I always think of one of my teachers used to say to me, before you go into the treatment room, completely forget everything that you just read about them, all the backstories. Like just let
Mm.
it all go and walk in as if you were meeting this person for the very first time
How lovely.
and let it go. Like totally be in the unknown that that is actually your true place of service. We talk about volunteering, we talk about different things in service. It's like to be curious, to be in wonder, and to be okay with the unknown, that you're safe. That's when there's space, actually, when you can presence the unknown, that's space. And
Mm.
then things will light up or call you or pull you in a direction that you need to go. I was having a conversation the other day about intuition and guidance. And I said, intuition is based on your past, your skills, your set, patterns. And intuition really is about a guess, but it's coming from your past. But guidance is actually coming from a place of not knowing, a place from completely presencing a place you've never been before. There's no reason why you know that you know that you know, but
Right.
there's some part of you that just goes, I just know I need to do this, or I need to say that, or I need to stop doing this, or you just know without any emotion.
Mm.
And that's coming from practicing feeling safe in the unknown. And that is a practice.
And being present, I mean, that moment of and coming through the holidays thinking about
Mm,
presence, right? The ability to be present. It's so interesting because I read something recently, and the gentleman was talking about quality time
mm.
and how we work so much, and we plan and we do all this stuff to create a moment where we could go off on vacation and have quality time. And he said, like, quality time comes from being a quality person.
Mm.
And I want to explain that because, well, you think, okay, well, I'm a quality person. Instead of thinking about it as far as like, or I guess thinking about what does it mean to be a quality person? For me personally, quality time comes from being present and aware in any given situation. So I could have quality time washing dishes. I could have quality time sitting and watching, a child play with blocks, or, like whatever, wherever I am in any given moment is quality time for me if I bring my presence to it.
It's reminding me the value of having a mindfulness practice, of
Mm.
being mindful and putting in practicing. It's not that it's about right or wrong about it. It's practicing centering your mind and focusing it on something and experiencing it fully without naming it, without, you know, having your preconceived ideas about it or your past judgments of it, just letting all that go and just literally dropping in and being like I said about, experiencing something as if it was the very first time. Whether it's food and you have a dish and you put it in your mouth, it's the first time you've ever had a spoon in your hand and you put the food in your mouth. It's the first time you've ever tasted that food. Even if, in your story, in your mind, you've like, well, I've had potatoes all my life. But what if it was the very first time that you gave yourself that experience of like, what would it be if I was an alien? I came down and I came into this body and I put this spoon and this potato in my mouth. What would I experience? And just presencing that, being mindful.
Yeah. I think it's a great practice going into this new year of how do I want to be in a new year, a new me, instead of all the outer goals. Or
Mhm.
maybe in addition to, maybe it's not an instead of, maybe it's in addition to. It just is like, I think many of us came through the holidays and are feeling that sense of, oh, I made it, but I didn't have, like, it wasn't the inner fulfillment. It wasn't the
Mhm.
quality time that I worked so hard to create. I bought presents so that we could enjoy it, and they got ripped, like the paper got ripped off, and it was next, 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 and then it was sugar high, and then it was crash, and oh my God, and what happened to the quality time?
Well, and we talk about why does time go so fast, right? It's
Mm,
or it's so bloody slow, like what's taking us so long? We're so impatient. Like they're two extremes and it's like, well, how is time related? Well, time is related to your presence, to your consciousness,
to your awareness.
to your awareness. If your awareness is everywhere, so is
Mm,
time. It is everywhere. And you're
yeah.
wasting it probably versus bringing all of your energy and your awareness to this moment. Time actually will get rich and slow down and
Mhm.
you'll have more of it. Like that's the magic part of it. I
Yeah.
mean, a simple practice of slowing down your breathing and just being present to your breath, even when you're in rush hour traffic or there just seems to be, your desk is overloaded with papers and you're like, how am I ever going to get all this done? Or how am I going to pay all these bills? Or just to stop the narrative that's going on internally and focusing on the breath helps to create the space and slows everything down so that time expands and then you can be in choice rather than in reaction.
And it's so interesting because from a business perspective, we hear that from our spiritual coaches, and Stephanie and I had the same business coach for, probably 12 years. And that's one of the things he always said is slow down to speed up.
Yeah, it
And
kind
it's
of sounds
so true.
counterintuitive, but
It
it
is,
actually,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
And it's true. So it's not just okay, it's a mindful thing. So that's my spiritual practice. And I set it aside and I do it in the morning or I do it in the evening. It's actually a business practice that will enrich your business. It will enrich
Hmm.
your personal lives. It's like it's a something to start practicing on a regular basis in those little between times when you have 5 minutes or there's a commercial going on or you are stuck in traffic or you have a pile full. I love that image because we've all had that pile full of a desk full of piles, whatever, and wondered like, how am I going to get all this done? I just need to dive in and go, 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 instead of taking me like, okay, I need to actually take a minute and just deepen and refine my breathing and then
Well,
go forward.
and I know when I first heard about slowing down to speed up, I kept thinking it was a physical thing. Like I need to go
Mhm.
slower, talk slower, you know, but really it's the
And that would be hard
internal.
for you.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it's like, but it's the internal stuff. It's like slowing my thoughts down, slowing my internal visual going all over the place, slow that down. You know, I was reflecting on a meditation the other day about when things have come to me, it's because they found me, not because I went out and searched for them. And what I mean, I can give you numerous examples of like anytime I've ever tried to make something happen, goal setting, New Year's resolution, I try to make something happen. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm not taking action, but when I'm taking an outer action in the world, like setting, say, how do you make God laugh, right? You make plans. And, in other words, what it's really to me is saying is like, how do you make God laugh? Is like, you basically tell God, this is what I'm going to do. And you ask God to show up to you. And it's like,
Right.
wow, that's kind of egotistical.
So you're not in a
You're not
conversation
in a
with
conversation. You're like, oh, by
it's
the way,
a
God,
it's
God
my
becomes,
way or the highway.
yeah, God becomes
Guess what?
the spiritual drive-through, right? And you're like, yeah, I'll
Right.
have 2 burgers and a fries and a large Coke, thanks. And that's kind of what we think we're doing. We're telling the universe what we want, but you know, the universe is not our slave. And we're not their slave either. We're not the universe's slave either. It's a dance. It's a relationship. It's a marriage.
Yeah.
And like a partner, it works out better if you're kind of asking your partner, so what do you think about this? Or what do you feel about that? Or what do you want? And then it's returned, it's reciprocated. And then you go, okay, what wants to happen that we can maybe create something even better together than we can on our own? And that's a totally different paradigm. So when I say the things that have happened and shown up for me in my life actually found me. I had to be in a practice where I was present and mindful and still inside to actually pay attention what was coming in.
So I'm going to use the example of my husband and my conversation. So if we can be that far apart in our understanding of what the other person is saying, having been married for X number of years, loving each other, and speaking the same language, English, right? And now we're in this conversation with the universe, and we're not sure how the universe is speaking to us. And we think we know, but we're not entirely sure. Having that practice of going in and getting quiet and really diving in and being like, you know what? I do want to be in this conversation. It's not one way. It's not, I want to order this and it either shows up the way I expect it to, or I'm a bad person, or that God doesn't exist, or, all the stories we tell ourselves. What if there's so much more going on? Just like with my conversation with my husband, what if there's so much more going on and the answer is to get curious and to be present.
Hmm. Yeah. And to practice, we talked about the bird of humanity many times that, one wing is flapping all the time. We don't get lift off and we go around in circles and we crash.
Right.
It's only until both wings are working in harmony with each other is when we actually can get gentle liftoff. We can change directions easily. We can soar and we can rest and we can play. And that's really what our life's work is about playing and purpose. It's like they're both. It's the inner and the outer that are merging together. It's the right hand and the left hand that's working together. But we tend to be so one-sided dominant. And when I
Mm.
say that, I mean, we are so conditioned to be doers and fixers and forcing something to happen. Like where there's a will, there's a way. Dang it, it'll happen. And I had an incident of meeting just a wonderful person the other day who was just moved to my town, and she's trying to get things set up for her business, and she's struggling. There was some things that were oppositions, and she was just like head down, butt up. I'm going to make this happen. And I was remembering. She said, "Well, you moved here many years ago, and how did you get started?" And I said, "Well, that's an interesting story because when I first moved home, I wasn't recognized for my profession. There was not a whole lot of people doing what I was doing. And the association that I belonged to out west was much older than the association that is here in the east. And they didn't have any precedents. My current association here in the east didn't have any precedents about how to accept new people. And so I was like, I baffled them. They're like, you don't fit in a box. We don't know where to put you. And I said, well, is there a test or an exam I could take? No, we don't have that. And you don't have the criteria or the credentials to be able to fit into our little box here. And I'm like, well, no, because I'm older than that. And I've got a lot more experience. And, it predates that current paradigm. And so I let it go. I'm like, you know what? If, I guess I could say if there's a will, there's a way or whatever. But it's like, I'm not going to force it. I'm just going to literally love what I do and do what I love. And I gave it a new name. I just invented a name and called myself that. And it was a really great idea to do. And lo and behold, a few weeks later, setting up business, I had one of the board members of the association come and had a session with me. And they're like, "Why aren't you with our association?" I said, "Because you have silly rules and I don't fit in those rules." "Oh, we have to change that." And next thing you know, that client actually went to bat for me and made things happen and worked behind the scenes and changed policies. And I'm like, I didn't do anything. But that client found me. I didn't go out looking. And I've said this with clients who are trying to get pregnant. And I'm like, God, stop trying to search for the baby, try the right time, the right moment, the right, it, eh, you're anxious. It's too anxious. I'm like, go have fun with each other. Do all the things you'll never be able to do once you have kids. Because once you have kids, like it's game over. You got 20 years now commitment. You're not going to be able to do those things. So go have fun, be free, be happy, be wonderful. And I always joke because I said I've gotten more people pregnant with literally with those ideas when they've let go of the figuring, forcing, and figuring, making trying to make shit happen and said, okay, I'm willing to show up to the game. What does spirit want from me? What does the conversation of life want from me? And can we play with this together? Because, hey, I'd like to have this, but maybe you have another plan for me. And I'm willing to accept that. I'm willing to accept that mission, game on. And that takes practice. It takes practice. It takes a community actually too. Otherwise you'll just siphon into that I shoulda, coulda, woulda, ought to, or doubts and fears, and you'll beat yourself up. So to have somebody with you on that, to be able to reflect, or to be able, I call it the rumble line. It's like to be able to keep you centered instead of when you are driving on the road and you hit that rumble line, it goes, blah, 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 that's pain. But if you didn't have that rumble line on the road, you're next thing you know, you're in the ditch. So it's like to have somebody who can gently help keep you centered, or lots of people who can help keep you centered, who are aligned with that. It's so key. So coming back to what we started in the beginning of, like, when someone says something to you and you completely hear it differently. I think we do that with the universe.
Oh,
We
yeah.
we tell the universe, "Hey, this is what I want," and we hear it differently. And because we have that internal noise going on, we don't have the space or the filter to actually be in relationship to what the bigger story might be. And so to be able to slow down, and because it's not just, with another person, it's with yourself, and it's with, I call it, the one who sent you here.
Yeah. And that truly is when we become spiritual adults, when we can let go of those old stories and the either, the teenage fuck you or fuck me, like
Yeah.
I'm so screwed or you're so screwed.
Because I think we do that with the universe. We go,
Yeah.
fuck you, universe, or I'm screwed. I'm going to hell in a handbasket. And we do that instead of opening up to a conversation of
Yeah.
what might be possible, and letting those judgment, letting that teenager, you know, soothing that teenager, because that teenager has a lot of life force within us. But to be able to say, hold on, just, cool your jets. I know you're upset. I know you're worried. I know you're anxious, but let's just hold space for what wants to happen,
Yeah.
because we don't know the bigger picture of what might happen. Just like you didn't know the bigger picture of where your husband was coming from to
Yeah.
be able to tell you to put on your seatbelt. You know,
Right.
we don't dive deeper to ask another question or to help to seek to understand. We just go from our ego saying, it's either this or it's that.
Yeah.
It's either
Either
right or
he
it's wrong.
he
Yeah.
thought that I didn't know to put on my seatbelt, not that he was actually thinking ahead of, gosh, she's going to have to juggle this thing in order to put on her seatbelt. I'll hold on to it and tell her to,
Yeah.
yay, remind her, just put on your seatbelt first, and then I'll hand you this. So there's a caring instead of a judgment, whereas I took it as
Or
a
defending.
judgment.
Yeah.
Right, right. So going into this new year, there's so much richness if we can stop. And I know it's not always easy, and it is about becoming a spiritual adult of stop and just drop in, or like say, you know what? I realize that there's a judgment running here, and maybe something else is going on. Do I have the space to just say, what could it be? Or at
Hmm.
least acknowledging that, you know what, maybe something else is going on here and I'm just not seeing the big picture, whether it's with another person, with yourself, with the universe, something showing up in your life.
Yeah, secure yourself inside to a loving presence instead of a disharmony or a fight against or fighting, with something. It's like,
And
let that go.
I'm going to invite our listeners to contact us about that, because that is a journey that Stephanie and I are absolutely committed to for ourselves and for all the people who are in our universe, in our circle of people. And if you're listening, you're one of those people. So if you're struggling with that of how do I know that I live in a friendly universe and really secure myself there so that I can feel safe in the unknown, reach out to us. That's what we do. That's who we are, and that's what we're about. We want everyone to live in that universe with us. So thanks so much for listening today. We would love to hear from you, as I mentioned, and or see you in our Facebook group or our LinkedIn group. Remember, you can also find us on YouTube. All of those are The Soulful Leader. And we will be back with you all next week on the Soulful Leader podcast.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader podcast with your host, Stephanie Allen
And Maren and Stephanie. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.